Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Voices of Forestry podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stephenson, the communications coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association, and we are back this month with yet another Voice of Forestry and a new topic, something we probably should have touched on a while ago, but haven't quite gotten there yet. We're going to be discussing logging today, kind of what that process looks like. But before I introduce my guest this month, let me give a special shout out and a thank you to our sponsors, DDK. We're going to hear a little bit more from them later on in this episode. But for now, let me introduce my guest, Kevin Jester, the president of KW Jester Logging, located in Arkadelphia, and he is one of our former Loggers of the Year back in 2019, I believe. That feels like such a long time ago. But Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
You bet, Seth. I appreciate the invitation to be here. I'm always excited to talk about our industry and the changes that are taking place and have an opportunity maybe to introduce it to some new folks.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to kind of spread the word, kind of tell our story, especially to folks who may not know what exactly you as a logger are doing out in the woods. But as always, Kevin, I want to kind of give you an opportunity to let the people know who you are, kind of how you got to be in the position you are. I know your family comes from a line of loggers, and this has been in your family for a hot minute now. So just tell the people who you are.
Yeah, you bet. I'm actually a third generation logger. My grandfather and dad were both in this business. I grew up with pine rosin in my blood pretty thick, working in the woods since I was 7 years old. Graduated high school, wanted to see some new country, so got out and left home, went to college, got a degree in agriculture business, and South Arkansas and the pine trees were calling me back pretty hard. So this will be my 32nd year of being in business, and we are now 4 generations in. My son,
nice.
25 years old, I think, or something like that, is in with us, and so we very much have a vested interest in this industry. We had a group out a couple of years back, some investors in one of the TMOs that we cut for, and we were trying to explain to them how important this land was. And I made the comment to them, and I think it took them a little off guard, but I was extremely sincere when I said it. I said, it's more important to me that this land is harvested in a sustainable way than it is to you. Your investment at some point is going to pass on to someone else, and then it's going to pass on to someone else, et cetera. I said, but my family's going on 4 generations of living off this land, and it needs to continue. So this is what we do. My entire family's involved in it. My wife doesn't hold a job outside of this company, so we're all in, so to speak.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that. And I guess that's something, too, that we've tried to make clear is, the landowners, the loggers, the people who actually work on this land aren't the folks you see on national TV just ripping up rainforests and leaving it be. These are people who care about the land and who make a living off of it and who have for multiple generations, and we want to take care of it as much as others do out there who want to make sure that the trees are preserved,
Absolutely.
In a way.
South Arkansas has one of the most intensively managed loblolly pine stands in the southern part of the U.S. And it's been managed very well and very intentionally, and it's been managed with a long-term future in focus. So that's the way we approach it.
Well, and like you said, you're a prime example of that, because you wouldn't be in the position you're at if it hadn't been for all those years,
That's exactly right.
Well, Kevin, let's kind of talk about the process of logging, if you will. How exactly are you kind of made aware of a tract that needs to be cut? Do you work with companies or landowners? What's the process look like for KW Jester Logging?
You bet, and we do some of all of that. We certainly procure some of our own timber from individual landowners, and we also have relationships with some large TMOs and REITs and investment groups that we do what we term as service contract work, which means we don't ever take ownership of the timber. We just perform a service for them to deliver it from the stump to the mill. So really, one of the big things that we really have to, about 6 months out of the year, have to focus on is what's the weather doing? And, we used to sit up, till 10:30 or 11 at night watching the news to see where the rain went through, and maybe get up in the middle of the night and check it again. Now we have these wonderful iPhones with apps, and I can get up at 4:30 in the morning and pull up my weather app, and I know in Columbia County on my track it rained, 0.75 inches. So it gives me a great tool to not have to spend a lot of time running around where I know there's probably no opportunities. But in general, once we have located a track that we believe is a workable track, we have to secure access. That's the first thing. So we look and say, does this track have public road frontage? Can we come from a public road directly onto the track? That's obviously ideal and easy if that's the case. If not, and we have to go through another landowner, we have to contact that landowner. You don't just trespass across somebody else without permission. So you have to get permission to cross that landowner. A lot of counties in South Arkansas now require a permit for you to use a county road. So you got to take a trip to the county judge's office, maybe pay a small fee. But once we're on the track and we have access secured, we do what we call a harvest plan. So we have a written plan for how we are going to approach each individual track. A lot of factors involved in that. One of the first and biggest ones would be what we would consider SMZs, or stream-side management zones. Those are areas where either the landowner or us or a consultant or someone has identified as there's a water quality here that needs to be protected. So there is a stream that we don't want to pollute in any way, and we don't want to dirty it up. So we have those boundaries marked off, and based on where those boundaries are, we have to decide, okay, can we get to both sides of that stream, or are we going to have to construct a crossing across that stream? And if we do, is it something we can do with our equipment? Do we need to bring in a culvert? Do we need to put down some bridges? We've got bridges that will span an entire width of a creek width and never touch the water. Beyond that, we start thinking about where to put our sets. Now, for people that may not know our terminology, that's just the primary area where we process our timber. And what we want to do is keep the distance from that area where we process our timber to where that tree is standing at to the shortest distance possible. The further you have to transport that tree from the stump to the place where you process it, the more expensive it is. So we try to plan how we're going to approach that way. There's a lot of factors involved on, do I need to go to this particular area of the track because it's dry this week and I need to get back here? Sometimes we run into issues about what a particular meal, what product a meal may be taking. Maybe this track has, product A on one end and product B on one end, and I'd love to go over here and cut product B, but the mill that takes product B has got me on quota and I can't deliver it this week. So I got to, just a lot of different factors like that. And then, so once we complete harvest, and we begin to close out the track, the number one thing is all wood is picked up and hauled. So there's nothing left on the ground. There's nothing left in our sets. If we have to haul partial loads, we haul partial loads, but we deliver all the wood for the landowner. Beyond that, we make sure any stream crossings that we might have are cleaned out and to BMP standards. General cleanliness, making sure you haven't left we eat lunch on the site, so you make sure somebody hadn't left a Coke bottle or something laying around, and we close out our roads and we redress our access, and maybe you have to take a culvert back out or whatever. That's a real short synopsis, I guess, of start to finish on one. Yeah.
Well, and the reason I wanted to kind of talk about this right off the top is to give people an idea that you're not just going out to some piece of woods, bringing the big equipment out there, start chopping, and you're good to go. There's a lot that has to be taken into account, especially when we're talking about best management practices with the streamside management zones, and just what makes the most sense from a business standpoint for you guys as well.
You bet. And, I didn't even mention there are contracts that have to be signed. Our crew actually moved on a track a couple of Mondays ago that we had a verbal agreement with a landowner, and we knew the deal was done, but we didn't have a signed contract yet. And we were using electronic devices to get contracts back and forth. And my guys were jumping at the bone to get started working, but we had to wait till 11:30 till we had to sign a contract because you just can't take those type of chances in today's world.
Yeah. And how many, I guess on average, how many folks do you usually have on a crew?
Well, that varies. We have what I might call a small crew. We run 3 crews, and you could almost term them small, medium, and large.
Okay.
So our smallest crew will run around 50 loads a week. Our largest crew will run 100 plus a week.
And that's loads from the site to the mill.
Yeah, that's correct. So overall, we're running close to 200 loads a week.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. And there's also, once you're there on the site and you're doing your thing, there's a little bit more to keep in mind when it comes to safety, equipment, management, making sure that stuff doesn't just bust up in the middle of your job. So there's a lot of other like smaller things once you're there that you're having to keep an eye on as well, right?
Yeah, there's a million other small things, as in any other small business. Anything that's built by man's going to break, and we have that happen. But we have we've got a pretty strict maintenance plan, regiment plan. Most of our guys are pretty seasoned, and they've got real buy-in, and it's wonderful to have employees that things matter to them, and but there's definitely a focus on safety. It's not the industry it was 30 or 40 years ago. When you had a lot of manual on the ground felling of trees and a really different type of danger. But anytime you have machinery that weighs 50,000 pounds moving around in the woods, you have potential for people getting hurt. Yeah. And a lot of times it's just how to get up and down off a machine properly.
Because I've been to a couple of logging sites now, and it always kind of surprises me just how big some of that equipment is, and the size of the logs that you guys are having to move around. That's there's a nice little kind of buffer zone of where people can stand and where you're working, but still there's always a safety concern, I'm sure, on any kind of job.
Absolutely.
Well, Kevin, we're talking about safety issues, and that kind of maybe leads me into issues specifically, or more generally. What exactly are some of the other, I guess, broader issues that loggers like yourself are facing today? Not necessarily on a work site, but just overall.
We're facing what most of America and maybe the world's facing right now is inflation issues. Just to give you a very general example, I purchased a piece of equipment delivered the last week of July of 2022. Purchased a piece of equipment exactly like that, same brand, same model, no updates, that was delivered in April of 23. And because of price increase and the interest rate increase, the monthly payment was $1,500 higher.
Oof.
So you take that and you multiply that over 3 or 4 or 5 machines, because we have to replace things on a continual basis. And, you start to get into pretty big numbers just over things like that. Interest rates touch everything we do. This is a very expensive business to be in. You turn a lot of money if you're running a couple of hundred loads a week. And so it takes a lot of money to operate. Just to get started would take a guy a couple of $1 million on a small scale. Well, you probably don't have a lot of people sitting around with that kind of cash, so what do? They go borrow the money. And so everything we do is affected by the interest rates, your insurance premiums, everything that takes place. So, inflation, interest rates, fuel is not as bad as it was a year ago. But a year to 18 months ago, it wouldn't have taken much for fuel to have really starved some folks out. We don't have we didn't have the capacity to adjust fast enough on the fuel. One of the other issues that's facing the logging industry in a very significant way, and it is also across many other industries, is the lack of CDL drivers. I talked to a school board member yesterday about a different issue, and he said, we have all of our teaching vacancies filled. The only place where we cannot find enough people are bus drivers. And it's across all the industry. If you look in Arkansas, it's even a little bit unique. Two of the largest trucking companies in the country are based in Arkansas, J.B. Hunt and Walmart. So we're not just participating with the next logging or competing with the next logging company down the road. We're competing with one of the largest companies in the world, who have a trucking company. So it creates a unique situation. We run around 17, 18 trucks between company-owned trucks and independent owner-operators. I was looking at that this morning. 3 of those drivers are younger than me. I'm fixing to turn 52, and only 3 of those drivers are younger than me, and they're not much younger than me. So we don't have an influx of youth coming in. And we've actually now made that a little more difficult with some policy changes that take place, where now a guy to get a CDL has to have a course that he has to take. It's going to cost you a few $1,000s. So we've actually, some might say, created some barriers, but we've certainly made the hill a little higher to climb there.
Well, do you think that's just lack of, I guess, information out there about these openings, or what do you think is the main rub here on why you're having a hard time getting those drivers?
I think it's a much bigger issue than that. I think if you look at the overall trucking industry, you see the number of trucks on the highway increasing significantly year over year. And so there is lots of competition for that CDL driver. And you look at a CDL driver that if he doesn't mind being gone for 7 to 10 days at a time, can go out on the road and run cross country and make more than he can make in a log truck. That's just facts of the matter.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of brings you to something else I wanted to mention, is that most of the logging groups that we deal with, and you yourself included, are not the Walmarts of the world. That you are kind of smaller businesses, locally owned folks who are have been working the land for generations. Yeah. So I guess that is the big hurdle, is having to compete with the Walmarts and the J.B. Hunts of the world, especially here in Arkansas.
You just have to try to appeal to a different individual, individual who wants to be home every night, an individual who maybe has some connections already to the logging world. It's just a different individual, really, that you're trying to hire. I may be a little unique. I'm not sure. We've actually had some decent success hiring people to work in the woods. We kind of separate it. We have trucking, and then we have in the woods, but every one of them have been connected to a family member that already worked for me.
Okay.
And we've really had great success. We have some wonderful young employees, and very young, under 20, that are great workers, very dependable. I know the young people today kind of get a bad rap sometimes. But I'm actually very impressed with the young people that we have, and so it's. But there's a stark difference when you start looking at training, trying to get CDL drivers.
So I guess is there there's probably not. This is going to sound like a dumb question, but is there an easy fix to that? What's the way to kind of get those drivers to you? Is it just appealing to that kind of small niche group of CDL drivers?
Well, that's a part of it. Is there an easy fix? No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Anything to do with being on the highway today is a high stressful job, and I think everyone understands that. And so, no, there's not an easy fix. Obviously, money is a huge factor in that. And, it's no secret in the logging industry, most logging companies work off of 2 to 4% margins. So we have a very difficult time. We actually can't compete with large trucking companies like that. Some of the things that we are and have been trying to work on are some policy changes. There's actually a House bill in the U.S. Congress now to increase the weight limit on interstate highways. So because of bridge laws and different things, we're not allowed to run on the interstate, which makes us, just take, for example, my town of Arkadelphia, Arkansas. If you're going to take a load of logs from the north end to the south end of Arkadelphia, you have to make 3 90-degree turns through the middle of downtown Arkadelphia. Well, we're if we were able to get on the interstate, we could travel 6 miles of interstate and not go by any of the colleges. We have 2 colleges in town which you have to go right by. Wouldn't have to go by any of the primary schools. Wouldn't have to go by the banks downtown. And so we've been working on that, and nothing has broken through yet, but we do feel like we've got momentum. The Arkansas Congress just passed an act to direct the Arkansas Department of Transportation director to request the U.S. Congress to allow states to allow log trucks on the interstates up to the maximum state limits. So some of those things could help. It might, in a small way, reduce the number of drivers that you needed and maybe reduce some of the stress associated with it.
Yeah, no, that's something that Max, our Executive Vice President, Max Praswell, has been kind of talking about and working on. And I'm sure with Larry Baccarosa, the director of the Timber Producers Association here in Arkansas. So that was one of the big wins this year, I think, during the session. Because I think another example that people like to use is Conway, Arkansas, also known as the city of roundabouts, and trying to get a log truck through all the roundabouts in that city is wild to see.
Absolutely.
So, well, Kevin, I tell you what, we're going to take a quick pause. I think this is a good spot to kind of take this sponsor pause, and we'll hop back into it here in a second. But for now, we're going to hear a little bit more from our sponsors this month, DDK. DDK proudly supports the AFA. In 1962, Mr. Jerry Davis started DDK with a core value of wanting to help forest landowners. With the professional services DDK provides, they allow landowners to have complete confidence in their portfolio, knowing that their property is managed at the highest level from an expert team with years of experience. Give DDK Forestry and Real Estate a call today and let them help you begin your land legacy. 501-219-8600 or visit them at forestryrealestate.com. Thank you again to this month's sponsor, DDK. Kevin, we're on the tail end of the discussion here, and before we hop into some of these other questions, one thing I did want to mention before we ended the kind of CDL discussion we had a second ago is that something that people need to understand is the truck driving part of what you guys are doing is a huge part of what you're doing. I mean, yes, you're out there in the woods cutting down the timber, but transportation is a huge factor in what loggers do on a daily basis, right?
You bet. My grandfather, who went through the 7th grade, was one of the wisest people that I knew, and his kind of mantra along those lines was, you don't get paid a dime till it crosses the scales. So we can do all the work we want to in the woods and do a wonderful job at it. And we can have wood produced that would last, that would take you weeks to haul, but we don't get paid anything for that. The only time we get paid is when it is delivered to its final destination at the mill. So we're no good without the transportation at all.
Just, again, highlighting how important, just having a driver is for you guys. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, Kevin, you are, and it was brought to my attention this morning that you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, the board president for the Economic Development Corporation of Clark County. Is that right?
Yes, chairman of the board.
Chairman of the board. That's what it was. Okay. So I guess I bring this up just to kind of talk about just loggers in their communities like yourself who are taking these leadership positions. How important is it for people like yourself to kind of make yourself known to the people you live with and work with every single day?
I think it's hugely important. I'm thankful that I have been provided through some wonderful employees and my son being involved now with the time and a little bit of the freedom to be able to do these kind of things, because it's really near and dear to my heart to see our communities thrive and remain sustainable. If just a side note here that goes along with this, we had an economic development board meeting yesterday. It was brought out in that meeting that the estimated census numbers from July of 21 to July of 22 were just published. I live in Arkadelphia, which is in Clark County, which is right on the north end of the southwest kind of corner of Arkansas. If you leave Little Rock and you drive southwest towards Texarkana, the only place where you see population growth is along the I-30 corridor. And when you get to Clark County, it stops right there. It does not go south of Clark County. Every county south of us, east of us, and west of us, except for Pike County, is losing population. That's our breadbasket right there.
Yeah.
That's where this wonderful wall of wood is at. That is vital. I mean, that's 5% of the GDP of Arkansas comes from timber and forest products. This is a huge thing. So we cannot let these places dry up. And so our county, fortunately, the citizens of our county passed an initiative to create an economic development tax. And our county judge appoints board members, and I've been on that board for a while. There's 15 board members. 3 of them are in the logging business. That tells you how important we see not just the logging business, but our entire community. This isn't just about logging. We just recruited Hostess to come into our industrial park. It's going to be a world-class bakery. We have Veolia, a hazardous waste treatment plant, who's doing a $1.5 billion expansion in our industrial park. So this is way beyond logging, but loggers understand that we don't all have to be loggers, but our community has to be able to thrive. And so we are so vested in making sure that not only are jobs available, but the quality of life in the places where we live is the type of things that attract people. And I just feel like we have some incredible amenities, not only in my county, but in Southwest Arkansas, but we have to take a lead to promote those things.
Well, it's just like, some of I know you've seen it, I've seen it, the smaller towns in Arkansas, once stuff like that dries up, those towns just kind of shrivel up and die. So if you don't nurture that, if you don't keep drawing in more people, then you're going to end up like some of these smaller southern towns.
You better believe it. It's just like maintenance on a piece of equipment. You can be reactive or proactive. And when it comes to economic development, being reactive, you're usually too late to do anything about it.
Yeah. Wow. We're getting into some deep stuff, deeper than I was expecting. But this is all very great, Kevin. Yeah. This is all good. So I guess where do you see, kind of talking about the future of things, where do you see the future of the logging industry going? What are some of the things that you've kind of kept an eye on here lately that you might see evolving over 10, 20 years or so? You
bet. The biggest thing that we need in South Arkansas is we need a market for pulpwood. We're planting about 2 to 1 as far as trees that we're putting in the ground versus what we're harvesting. So we have an over mature forest right now that is begging to be thinned and managed, but we need a home for that product. And there's obviously paper is a different industry than it was 30 years ago, but there's some really exciting emerging markets. Things to do with woody biomass, pellets. One of the things that we've seen happening in Arkansas is CLT, or cross-laminated timber. It's been kind of an up and down ride, but I think that it has incredible potential. You'll notice that our flagship university in the state, the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, has vested a good deal of money into the research of CLT. They built a dormitory out of cross-laminated timbers, did some work on a library out of that material. The Anthony family, which has deep roots in the timber industry in Arkansas, has contributed a significant amount of money to a design and innovation center in Northwest Arkansas to research and find new markets for this product that we have. Instead of just we thought we had a major market coming in a few years ago in Clark County that didn't develop, and it was heartbreaking. But I really think it forced us to rethink how to get outside the box here and think in different ways. So I think that's one of the ways that we have to go with that. We have to find a way to recruit young people into this industry. And I have told a number of school board administrators or school administrators, school board members, voag teachers, agri teachers, let me come talk to your kids. I just, career day or whatever it is, just let me talk to your kids and explain to them how there is the potential for a career in this business. A very middle income, I feel like that our employees are the backbone of the communities that we live in, and I feel like our industry can pay a very much above sustainable wage to those kind of people. But I think even in South Arkansas, sometimes people still don't get that. Logging has been there for so long, they kind of see it as, still this extremely dangerous, labor-intensive, hard physical, manual labor, and not saying that it doesn't have an edge of danger in labor, but, most of the time we're sitting in an enclosed cab, heated and cooled, listening to the radio in our, with our ear pods in. So I just like to tell that story to as many people as we can. Just in the same way you can go to work in a manufacturing facility or at a plant down the road or somewhere and have a 30 or 40-year career, you can do the same thing in the logging industry.
And I mean, you even said some of your guys have been with you for 30, 40 years,
Long
right?
time. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We get a hold of them. We don't want to let them go.
Yeah, I bet. Well, no, and that's, something, again, that we've kind of been working on as well, is just the workforce development of everything. I know we're working with Be Pro, Be Proud here next door at the Arkansas State Chamber, trying to get kids in front of what it might look like to be a logger or to work some of that equipment in a safe environment for a teenager.
You bet.
But I know that's just kind of a big overarching thing in the forestry industry here lately is workforce development and workforce recruiting.
It is. And, we're very fortunate to have organizations like the AFA, which don't have the term logger in their organizational name, but have put a distinct focus on the logging portion of the timber industry. Then we have organizations like the Arkansas Timber Producers Association, which is more strictly a logging organization, but both of which do a wonderful job of promoting our industry. Some of that is in the public eye in schools, with teachers and workshops and things like you've just talked about. Some of that is over at the state capitol, lobbying for things that we need. And so those organizations have played a big part in some of the things that have happened to help our industry. And, we need more loggers to be able to take the time out of their schedule to participate. And I know how hard that is to do, but all of us want this thing to be, to live beyond us.
Well, what's that old saying? It takes a village, but I guess in this case, our child is just forestry in general.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And one thing I do kind of want to mention, since you brought it up, to the Fay Jones School of Architecture, we actually spoke with Dr. Peter McKeith last month.
Yeah.
So if you missed that episode, listener, go check that one out. It was a good one. It's called The Forest and the Trees. So just kind of to get a more in-depth look to what Kevin was mentioning here, some of that CLT work that's being focused on, or just the usage of wood products in architecture.
You bet. And let me give a shout out to the University of Arkansas at Monticello also, and Dr. Pelkey and his staff down there. They are doing a tremendous amount of work for the timber industry and the logging industry. And they've just started up a new business school down there. We just watched some of the online modules that they're offering now, some business modules for loggers that may not have any business training. They're doing a wonderful job in helping our industry. Yeah,
the Center for Forest Business that they've created down there has just been absolutely wild with the stuff that they're doing. And we're hoping to have some more of those folks on the show too.
You bet.
Just to kind of talk about what they're looking at and what they're doing over there, which is wild stuff for forestry in general. Well, Kevin, I think we're at that point now where we're wrapping up. But before we go, the one thing that I kind of want to ask you is as a logger, as a multi-generational logger who's been doing this for a while now, what is it that you hope people take away, or what is it that you hope people or what do you want people to know about loggers or logging in general? What do you hope people take away from this conversation?
To try to sum that up is obviously tough when you're as close to the industry as I am. But I think what I would say is I want people who may not be familiar with the industry to understand that trees are America's greatest renewable resource. Mm-hmm. It is a renewable resource. You could even think of it as a row crop. It just has a much longer rotation than corn or soybeans or cotton. But that is what we're doing, and we have proven that we can grow more than we're harvesting, that we have proven that this land can be made sustainable to grow wonderful pine trees. And I think over the last 60 years or more, we've proven that we have a very, very long-term focus here, that this is not cut and get out, as the term may have gone back in the 20s or 30s or earlier. But we have a sustainable management plan for the forest of South Arkansas and all over the southern part of the country, really. And I think that's what I want people to see, that we are providing valuable resources to the economy, and products that people use every single day, not just toilet paper and paper towels. You know, it's incredible the things that byproducts of trees are involved in manufacturing. And so just to see the vitality of that and to realize that we're very much vested in this being a long-term thing.
And I guess one thing I need to reiterate too, that I've mentioned in multiple episodes probably at this point, is we're talking to an Arkansas logger today, but everything that you've just said isn't necessarily unique to Arkansas.
That's right.
This is places that have a heavy forestry presence. The same kind of folks are dealing with this stuff every day as well. Some similar issues, similar processes of work. So this is just, we're here in Arkansas, so we're using an Arkansas example, but this is pretty universal to most loggers, if I'm not speaking out of turn. Okay, well, Kevin, is there anything else, man, that you want to add or you'd like to say before we wrap it up here?
Man, I'd just like to say thank you, Seth. Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity to be a voice for our industry. Hopefully it's a good one.
It was great. It was awesome.
But I just appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of this industry.
Well, and thank you for joining us. I know I was a little worried I was getting to you late in the month here to get you on the show, and I knew loggers' schedules can be busy, but it all worked out today, and we really appreciate you hopping in and joining us.
You bet.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Well, Kevin, thank you again. And we want to thank you, listener, for joining us again this month. A special shout out and a thank you to our sponsors one last time before we wrap up here. Thank you to DDK for their continued support of the show. And as always, we want to give a special shout out and thank you to some guy named Rob McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love. That's off of his album, The Folkster. You can find more of his music on Spotify. And as always, we'll have a link to his website in the description of this episode. Well, make sure you join us next month when we'll have a new topic, a new discussion, and a new Voice of Forestry.